What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Mind of Marsal podcast. This is episode number 110. I'm your host, Armando Marsal. You can find all of my work over at fantasyguru.com. Follow me on the Twitter machine at Armando underscore Marsal, as well as on Instagram threads and TikTok at Mind of Marsal. Before jumping into it, I just want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in. I greatly appreciate you all. Remember, if you're enjoying the content, if you're enjoying the podcast, join the episodes. Make sure you like, follow, rate, review wherever it is you are consuming the podcast. Also, reminder, we got the podcast now in the video form there at YouTube. I follow my channel there at Mind of Marsal. I've been doing some shorts there with some draft or pass players and things like that. So make sure you're checking that out as well. Any questions, any topics, anything you want me to discuss, you can email those to mindofmarsal@gmail.com, and I'll make sure to talk about that here on the podcast. Remember, folks, if you haven't been checking it out, we got a ton of content there at fantasyguru.com. Our NFL draft guide is live and constantly being updated there. We got our training camp tomorrow there at fantasyguru.com on Friday, August 15th. It's an entire day event where there's going to be different PowerPoint presentations. There are going to be all of the analysts covering different topics. I'll be on from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern. I'll be talking about different league setups, different league formats, roster construction for some of these formats, and things like that. So make sure you're checking that out. We got our draft battle series also going live this week. I will be posting the Caleb Johnson versus Travion Henderson argument there. So make sure you're checking that out. Let me know what side you're on there. Are you on the Johnson or are you on the Henderson side? We got the training camp reports as well. We'll be doing the preseason DFS breakdowns there. So we got tons of content there at fantasyguru.com. So make sure you're checking all of that out, folks. And if you haven't already done so, take advantage. We got some promotions going on. Email customer support. Tell Ted Schuster, Armando Marsal sent you his way, and he will definitely be taking care of you there. I will be riding solo today. It's been a while since I've done a solo pod, but this one, it will be a solo one. I'm going to be talking about the Kings Classic, Len Dawson there, that division, that 14 team league. I'm going to be talking about that draft results from there. I was on vacation, so I was away for a couple of weeks there. Took a week break and not necessarily 100% off. I was in Discord. I was answering questions. I did post some of our draft guide strategy podcasts. I did have some articles posting there, part of our betting guide that we did there at fantasyguru.com. So I was involved. I was in Discord, like I said, answering questions all times of the day. We did do some drafters, best ball drafts as well. Make sure you're taking advantage of our promotions there with drafters. But I didn't record any podcast there while I was there. Tried to, spend as much time as possible with the family. But I am back. I am in. We're all in now. The season is right around the corner, and I actually did this draft on my last day there in my vacation. I did this King Classic draft there. So this is a 14 team, and what I'm going to do here is basically give you the breakdown of the draft, the thought process, what I could have done better, what went wrong, what went right, things like that. We often get asked about, larger league settings, 14 teams. What do you do? Does a strategy change? So I feel like this is a good, podcast, and this is a good topic here to discuss, not only to break down my team, not only discuss my thought process with my picks, but also to discuss these larger settings, right? This is a 14 team PPR. It was a snake draft. Like I mentioned, it's a Keen's Classic here, Len Dawson division. Big shout out to Bob Lung, who sets these up there. And then also a huge, shout out and a big thank you to Jeff Mans for the opportunity to let me be part of these drafts. He, calls me every year. Says, hey, do you mind taking this draft? I'm like, I'm happily taking this draft on, Jeff. Always a pleasure, always a good time. So last season we did finish in second place in this league. So we're looking to make another strong run this season. Maybe a little bit better fortune in getting that first place, getting that championship belt there. So a little bit about this league. So this is a head-to-head league. I mentioned it's 14 teams. It's a PPR format. It's 4 points for passing touchdowns. The roster sizes are 16. There are some IR spots. There's 6 bench spots, 10 total starters. We're starting one quarterback, two running backs, three receivers, one tight end, and three flex spots. It is a one quarterback league. This is a deep draft, like you mentioned. It's 14 teams, 16 rounds. So definitely a deep draft there. And you're obviously, drafting with a bunch of people from the industry, so everyone knows what they're doing here. Everyone for the most part works in the industry to some capacity or is part of the industry there. So we have had some just sharp drafting. It's very difficult to navigate these 14 team leagues as it is. And then when you have people that are paying attention, people that are on it, it makes it a challenging draft. So I we drew the fifth pick. My team was we had the fifth pick, and I like this pick. We talk about the number. I get asked a lot. What pick do you like, and where do you like drafting from? And I saw Rich Mileto, answer this, and I think it was a great answer, right? Where I don't really have a position where I don't care for. I have positions I feel better about, and I really like the top five picks. And if I don't draw the top five picks, it doesn't really matter to me where I end up. In a format like this, where it's 14 teams, I like the idea of being in that 5 to 7 range because you do get, you're kind of in the middle of every round, and you're not necessarily, waiting at the tail end where you're waiting for picks for multiple times. Like you're talking about 2 rounds, right? Like, and in this league, you're talking about 28 picks later almost. So a lot of picks between you and your next pick. So it really makes it challenging too, because you got to think about, do you want to reach for players? When do I want to take this player? When does the next run at this position begin? Like, there's a lot of challenges and obstacles in these kind of drafts where there are more teams, and you just have to think about it from this perspective. Really, you have by the sixth round, you have an extra round added to a 12-team league, right? So in a 12-team league, when you're in the seventh round, you're basically in the sixth round of a 14-team league. So the pool gets thinner, the player pool gets thinner, thinner, and thinner quicker in these kind of formats. So usually when I draw a top five pick, my mind is instantly thinking wide receiver unless Bijan Robinson lands to me at number five, which is generally not the case. So my top five players, and in no particular order, really, but my top five players are Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, Bijan Robinson, Malik Neighbors. That's kind of where I'm at in PPR settings, especially in a format like this where you must start 3 receivers and you have 3 flex spots, right? And if you look at the league setups, I'll be talking about that on Friday there at fantasyguru.com. If you look at the league setups in the PPR format, receivers do benefit a lot in this scoring setting. They do get that extra incentive there, given that they're getting the point per reception. So, the first pick was Bijan Robinson in this draft, and if I would pull this up for those on YouTube, I would pull this up, but this was done on ESPN, and on ESPN there's really no draft board. It's essentially just a list, and it gets confusing if I pull it up, and I don't want to confuse anyone, so I'm not going to have the draft board behind me here. But I will be, discussing some of the players who were there in that range and that kind of considered and all that stuff. So I will go with the first couple of rounds where people could understand kind of how the draft was going. So in the first round, I was picked number five, and Bijan Robinson went first, then Jamar Chase, Jahmyr Gibbs, Saquon Barkley. I mean, Justin Jefferson was my pick at number five. To me, he's the number two receiver, the number two player on my board in a PPR setting. I look at him and Jamar Chase's, they're right there. Like, they are right there. Justin Jefferson has been doing for quite some time. Quarterback hasn't been an issue for him regardless of who's behind under center there in Minnesota. Justin Jefferson produces. For me, this was a no-brainer. I locked in one of my guys, someone I'm very high on, and I was very happy about that. And then we went CeeDee Lamb, Christian McCaffrey, Ashton Genty, Malik Neighbors, Devon Achane, Nico Collins, Brian Thomas Jr., Bucky Irving, Puka Nacua. So that wraps up the first round. And on the way back, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Derrick Henry, Chase Brown, Jonathan Taylor, Drake London, Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, AJ Brown, T. Higgins, and then we are on the clock. That AJ Brown going there, 2 picks ahead of me. That one really bothered me, man, because I really wanted to pair up Justin Jefferson, AJ Brown. Ideally, that would have been a phenomenal start for me. Um, so I'm sitting here with a couple of interesting options, right? I obviously love Garrett Wilson. I've been talking a lot about him and how much I am in on him this season. But I also thought to myself, I'm expecting a little running back run here, right? And I wanted to be ahead of the curve because there was still like about three guys, four guys that really, really like here. And there was still going to be, I was picking, and then there was going to be another eight picks before I pick again. And I was anticipating, at least four of those picks to be running backs. And so I decided to go with Josh Jacobs. It was really between Josh Jacobs, Brees Hall, Kyron Williams for me in that range. The reason why I didn't go Brees Hall here is because I really thought Garrett Wilson was going to get back to me, and I didn't want to double tap the Jets here. Plus, and the reason why I didn't go Garrett Wilson is because I felt that the only running back that would be left in that spot in the next pick for me would be Brees Hall. So I said, let me see what happens because what I can do here at this point is see, kind of see what wide receivers go, see what wide receivers land to me. But I definitely didn't want to miss on that run of running backs, right? And I wanted to be the beginning of that run. So I went with Josh Jacobs. I like Josh Jacobs a lot here this season, someone that I have high on my board um, and who I have high expectations for. You look at this backfield, like some of the backups are already dinged up. We know the usage is going to be there. We know that the Packers offensive line is a solid one, and Josh Jacobs has proven so long as he's getting the volume and he's healthy, he can produce at a very high level. So for me, I solidified my RB1 there. I do have Josh Jacobs inside my top 10 there. And then very, very next picks were Kyron Williams, Amari Hampton, Lad McConkey, and Jackson Smith-Njigba. I thought about Kyron Williams. I like him a lot as well. But it was just one of those situations where I really wanted um, to give myself a shot at someone like a Josh Jacobs, someone like a Kyron Williams there. But I ultimately went with the guy I had ranked just one rank. It's literally one rank ahead. Like they're in the same tier. And to me, it's a matter of preference. If you were in this spot and you go Kyron Williams, sure. I have nothing against that. To me, I have these players in the same tier there. I just really like what I've seen, right? And I know what that's going to be. I'm expecting, I'm hoping Garrett Wilson lands to me. So we wrapped up that second round. The first four picks of that third round went Marvin Harrison Jr., Kenneth Walker, Garrett Wilson, Lamar Jackson. So this was one of those situations where I really, really wanted Wilson. Again, two picks ahead of me. The player I want goes. It's generally how these drafts play out. Things don't always go your way. So I ended up going with Davante Adams. I like this pick a lot here, who I have as wide receiver 16 on my board. And I think you're getting a good floor. And I think you're getting plenty of upside here. And I'm expecting a significant role for Adams here in the red zone for the Rams. I think that he obviously showcased that he still has plenty of gas left in the tank. Is he past his prime? Sure. But for me, I think he's going to make an impact this season. I think he's going to have a consistent role. We saw it, with when Nakua and Cup were both on the field. They both saw over a 20% target share. The opportunities as an offense are going to be condensed, and it's going to be Kyron Williams, it's going to be Davante Adams, it's going to be Nakua. We know Nakua has had issues, with embattled injuries in the past. So if he misses any time, Adams becomes the number one wide receiver in this offense. I'm looking at this as I get myself a very strong wide receiver here, wide receiver to the pair up with Justin Jefferson, and I'm getting myself a weekly floor and someone who I expect to be, a top 20 receiver here this upcoming season. So my wide receiver two there, very happy with that pick. As we go down, so we go through round three, then we get to round four, and Brees Hall was actually selected in that first pick of round four. I almost double clicked, by the way. I almost double clicked running back. And I decided not to do that in this draft because there was going to like you could start up to six receivers and you must start three. I didn't want to go into that, fourth round with only one receiver. I don't like to do that in this kind of format, especially with this specific, roster setting. I just didn't want to take that approach. So I did strongly consider it though. To be honest with you, something I contemplated. I did take a little long to take that Adams, but very happy with Adams there. Fourth round, that's when they took my second running back. So I had DeAndre Swift. These are the players I was kind of in between here. DeAndre Swift, Terry McLaurin, and DJ Moore. Those were the three guys I was really in between here. DK Metcalf was already gone. Brees Hall was already gone. These some guys I'm in on that they were already out. So for perspective, Mike Evans was already gone. Cortland Sutton was already off the board. So I ended up going with DeAndre Swift. I know fourth round might be a little bit early, but remember, we're talking about 14 team league. And I am the type of person and I'm the type of drafter that I really don't give two shits about ADP. I'm going to get my guys when I want to get my guys and when I feel like I should. And when I look at, some of the teams that were picking behind me, there was still some that were missing some running backs. And I'm locking in a running back I feel very comfortable with as my RB2. A running back I can see creep up into that top 15, top 16 range, potentially top 12 if he stays healthy. Like, I think there's that kind of potential. I'm pairing him up with another good running back. So I got myself a very good foundation at wide receiver and running back so far. And I'm very high on DeAndre Swift. He's someone that I think is going still overlooked and somewhat undervalued. So for me, taking him here, I was very happy with that pick there. Very next pick is round five. I got the fifth pick. I went with Devontae Smith, right? And look, I really, really like Smith more than most. I would say that he's my wide receiver three on this team, but I have him, inside my top 25. He's wide receiver 22 on my board. He's been, wide receiver 20, a top 24 wide receiver in PPR points per game over the last three seasons, because this is consistently seeing upwards of 20% target share. His role in this offense is consistent. Like, there's just no way around it. Like, it's consistent. Yes, AJ Brown is the number one wide receiver. Yes, Barkley has a solidified role, but that doesn't mean that Devontae Smith is not going to see his share of volume, and he will continue to see opportunities here. So for me, Devontae Smith was a pretty easy click as my wide receiver three. I now I feel comfortable with my two running backs. I feel comfortable with my three wide receivers. I don't feel like I took on a lot of volatility early on. You look at Smith. I'm looking at some of the numbers. He's had over 100 targets in all but one season in his career. Like, someone that does have a nice role in this offense. So I have him pretty high on my board, and I took him here. I'm very happy. There was some other. So I thought about Calvin Ridley here. That was another one I was kind of in between. But given the kind of receivers I already had, I felt like Smith was that one that fit the best. Pickens was someone I consider as well. But the problem with Pickens is in a redraft format, I think there could be some volatility on a week-to-week basis, and I try to avoid that as much as possible, especially early on in drafts. Don't mind it later on in drafts, but early on, I try to avoid that. DJ Moore went right before, probably would have gone more if he was still there. And yes, I know I have Swift, and I normally don't like to, I've mentioned this before, in Discord. I've mentioned this on the podcast. I've mentioned this on live stream. This is one of those situations I don't have an issue with, there. So I did go with Smith because he was the one available there. Again, some of the other guys I was thinking about there was Calvin Ridley. Hawkinson went right after I picked Smith. I thought that was too high for Hawkinson. I could have gone the third running back like a Pollard, a Caleb Johnson, things like that. But I wanted to get that third receiver, and that was my plan, right? Like, I usually like to leave the first 5, 6 rounds with two to three running. I'm sorry, 1 to 2 running backs, and then 3 to 4 receivers. Kind of that's my thing. That's how I draft. Round six comes up, and this is where you see things like going in different directions. Like, people start taking chances on certain players. People building for depth. This is a good time to. I could have gone quarterback. So at this point, I don't have a quarterback. I don't have a tight end, right? I think we all know that. And Hawkinson, like I said, went right after me, right after I picked Devontae Smith. Travis Kelce went at that front end of round six. So I picked Smith in round five. So, we saw Travis Kelce going towards that front end of round six. So I tell myself at this point, it's Evan Ingram, Mark Andrews are the tight ends available. You got David Njoku still out there. You have Colston Loveland, Tyler Warren, Tucker Kraft, like Jake Ferguson. Like, there's tight ends out, Kyle Pitts. Like, it becomes now like a fall off for me, right? So I continued to hammer the wide receiver position, and I took Chris Godwin. I really feel like this is a really good value for Chris Godwin. I know he's coming off the injury, but again, it's one of those situations where I'm getting him as my wide receiver four. We saw what he's capable of doing. He's was posting wide receiver one numbers early on last season before the injury. Someone who's been very, very consistent when healthy. You can count on him on a weekly basis. He now becomes an easy plug and play when healthy as the one of my three flex options. I'm taking a risk here. I know that there's a chance that he misses a couple of games early on in the season, but that's okay. He's my wide receiver four, and I drafted accordingly, right? I will continue to make moves knowing that the potentially could be without him here for a couple of weeks if to start the season if he misses any time. But I'm preparing as he would be missing time. But again, I look at him. He's a rock solid wide receiver two with wide receiver one upside here, and someone that will continue to carve out a role. We know he has a solidified role in this offense. He and Baker Mayfield had that chemistry last year, which was great. Um, so so right now we're at two running backs. We got four receivers. Again, this is a PPR format. You start one quarterback, two running backs, three receivers, three flexes, and a tight end here. At this point, by the way, I decided I'm going to wait at tight end and I'm going to look for a floor option, like a week to week floor option here. There were several guys on my board that I'm like, okay, I could take this tight end and I'm going to be comfortable with that tight end. And that's pretty much the thought process there. So at this point, I know I'm going to be waiting until a couple rounds before my next tight end. For the quarterback position, there was a couple quarterbacks that still had, I always aim for a top 10 quarterback on my board. Like that's what I do in these drafts in single quarterback leagues. Always aim for a top 10 quarterback on my board. And there was still plenty of quarterbacks available that are top 10 on my board here. So I said, let me continue to wait here and see what rolls down. So in round seven, after I took Chris Godwin, both Bo Nix actually went before my next pick there. And then Evan Ingram, I was considering Evan Ingram round seven, but he went. Mark Andrews went as well. So the next quarterback, that we have here were Patrick Mahomes was available, Drake May was available, Kyler Murray was available, Justin Fields was available, Dak Prescott. So like I'm very comfortable with most of these guys, if not all of them, as my QB1. So I thought to myself, I don't need to take a quarterback right now around seven. I really don't. So I took Michael Pittman Jr. here as my fifth receiver here. And when you look at Michael Pittman, he's finished as a top 20 wide receiver in PPR scoring in three of his 4 years in the NFL. I think whether it's, obviously the quarterback situation there matters. You have Anthony Richardson, who is one of the most inaccurate quarterbacks we've seen in quite some time. And you have Daniel Jones, who's not great, but I do think he is an upgrade to Anthony Richardson for the receiving group here. So I eventually I do think we're going to see Daniel Jones under center. Remains to be seen who's going to be the week one quarterback. It's still that's still up in the air. I think a healthy Richardson is going to be the week one starter, but I don't think it's going to be for the entirety of the season. I think there's going to come a point where we're going to see Daniel Jones. Regardless, I do think Pittman could produce at the minimum wide receiver three slash flex option or flex productions. Like he should produce top 45, top 40. I got him as my wide receiver five. If I'm getting 12 fantasy points per week from him, I think that's very feasible. If you look at his production throughout his career here, it's one of those situations where you look at it and you're not asking a lot from him, right? Like you're not asking someone to do a lot more than they've done throughout the career. So I think you could definitely get that here. If you're looking at PPR, so he has 7.6, 14, 13.7, 15.8, and 10.5 last year. So yeah, in three of his last four seasons, he's been a top 20 wide receiver in PPR scoring. So yeah, I'm in. I have him higher. I have him higher ranked than most. I think that you are getting a good value here for a quality player. So, for me, I have him here as my wide receiver five and someone that I'm going to be comfortably playing in my flex pretty much every week, in this format, in the PPR format. So he's coming off. another 100 plus target season. He has 129, 142, 156, 110 last season. Not someone that scores a lot of touchdowns, but again, we're not looking for, the next Jamar Chase right now. Like you're not getting that here. You got right now with this group of my receivers, I'm comfortable with a floor option, right? You can get the high upside guy, the up and down guy, but you can also get the floor guy. And I decided to go with the floor guy. Almost went Stephon Diggs, and I think I regret not doing so, right? Um, I guess I overthought him coming off of injury, and then Chris Godwin coming off of an injury, and I know Diggs is good and whatnot, and all reports are great regarding how he looks and whatnot. So it might have been a little overthinking on my behalf there. But he was the only other player I considered there as far as receiver. I wanted Jaden Higgins. That was another one I was in between. Um, but I decided to go with Pittman, someone who I like, someone who I have pretty high on my board, compared to, the consensus. And someone I think gives me a pretty safe floor and I think untapped upside, right? Like I don't think we've truly seen I don't think we've seen his ceiling. Whether he hits it this season or not, or whether he ever reaches the potential ceiling, uh, remains to be seen, but I don't think we've seen his potential ceiling just yet. All right, so round eight, this is where I mentioned earlier, right? You want to reach for people. Sometimes there's certain players you adamant about. There's certain players you're planting your flag on. This is one of those players for me. His name is Trey Benson. Now, hear me out. Round eight sounds a bit early, but this is technically round nine in a 12 man league. And I was like paying close attention here, and the James Conner owner had two picks between my round eight pick and my next pick in round nine. So that gentleman or lady had two picks before my next pick. And if they're in the handcuffy business, I can almost guarantee you there was no way in hell Trey Benson got back to me. And for me, Trey Benson has standalone value even when James Conner is healthy. I do think there's going to be opportunities for Benson here. And if James Conner misses any time, I think Trey Benson can be a RB1 on a week-to-week basis. I think he has league-winning upside, league-winning potential in that scenario. And I wanted to swing for the fence here, right? That this is me swinging for the fence with a player who I'm very high on this upcoming season. So I went with Benson here. It is a bit of a reach, but I'm okay because I knew that there was a good chance that he's not there the very next round, given the fact that the James Conner owner was picking between. He had two picks between that my round eight pick and my round nine pick. So it's again, we go back to where you're at. So for me, I am big on Benson, and this is before we've been talking about Benson all off season. There at fantasyguru.com. And some of us, not all of us, but some of us at fantasyguru.com. And I think that this young man can have a big season if the opportunities are there for him. And even if they're not, I think he should be able to return value given where he's going in fantasy drafts here. Now, round nine, this was a rookie mistake on my end, guys. And this is where, sometimes I guess you could say I have fat fingers. So we go to round nine here, and then I was going to get Jaden Blue. That was going to be my pick. My pick was Jaden Blue, and I had fat fingers, and it went to Javonte Williams. I had the Dallas Cowboys backfield in my queue there, and I my fat fingers hit Javonte Williams. I obviously dislike that pick in the fact that I would have preferred Blue. But at the end of the day, I'm getting now someone who, at least at the beginning of the season, can give me some type of production. I do think Williams will have, a role early on in the year. I wouldn't be surprised if he opens up the season as the number one running back for the Cowboys. I do expect Blue to eventually emerge as that number one running back. I do think that he's incredibly explosive. Like he actually reminds me a lot of Devon Achane. And I, yeah, it's one of those situations where you're like, fuck, man, like just fat fingers. It's really what it is. But I look, all right, whatever. I get myself a flex guy here. Still don't have a tight end, right? Still don't have a quarterback. But again, I wanted to continue to hammer the running back and the wide receiver position here and continue to pretty much give myself depth at all of these positions because I think in this, especially in this format, is very, very important to have depth, right? Like you don't want to be holding the bag with very, very weak, wide receiver three or very weak or two weak flex spots. Like you don't want to be doing that here. So that was round nine. And I went with that. Javonte Williams. Wish I would have gone Jaden Blue. That's where I really wanted to go. But again, we were looking at guys like Austin Eckler at this point, Rashad White, two in Braylon Allen, like Jerome Ford. These were the kind of running backs that were on the board when I made this pick. Ray Davis was there. Um, so I'm okay because I'm still getting a starter right now and someone who committee, like potential committee, like, okay, why not, and if he does start off, like reports have been pretty solid for Williams too. If he does start off good, he might just hold off or hold on to a what, a 10 to 15 opportunity role on a week to week basis. So not entirely, a, sh a shit pick, but definitely not what I was aiming for there with that number nine pick. I really wanted Jaden Blue, like I mentioned, but I'm okay with Javonte Williams. It happens. But I did know that I wanted to go with another running back here because my plan then was given the players that were still there. I did want to go with quarterback and tight end in no specific order in the very two rounds. There was still there was still four guys that I was very comfortable with here as my quarterback one, by the way. All right. So, in round 10, two of my guys had been taken. One of them I knew was not going to be taken because he's so far down a lot of people's boards. So I said, let me get Dallas Goedert, who I personally have inside my top 12 in PPR scoring as far as rankings are concerned. I'm sorry, inside my top 15. So he's right there, like makes the cutoff for this format. I think you get a low floor, a pretty good floor. Yeah, it's a low ceiling, not a ton of upside, but you're getting a nice floor here on a week-to-week basis in PPR scoring. Someone who, yes, I paired him up with Devontae Smith, and I say I try to avoid that, but this is very different. Like, this is now a round 10 player that I'm selecting on the same team. It's not necessarily, investing too early draft capitals on a player like I would have had to do with Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall there. So that's kind of what I went with here at tight end. I think, again, I go back to you look at what Goddard's done and you look at what he brings to the table. And it's not elite by any means, but you're looking at, when you look at his numbers in PPR points per game, going back to 2019, you're looking at 12th, 10th, 8th, 5th, 12th, 10th. He's been a top 12 scoring tight end per game in every season since 2019. So for me, I think I'm getting myself a decent player here at round 10 at a position that I'm not looking to gain an edge here. I feel like filling out the flex spots. I feel like filling out those wide receivers, those running backs. I think that was far more important here. And then very next pick here in round 11, I went with my quarterback. Finally took the plunge, and it's CJ Stroud. So I like CJ Stroud a lot. And for me, I have him as a top 10 quarterback. I'm very, very excited to get him here this late. For me, it's a steal. You look at what he's been able to do. Yes, he regressed last season. It's his young career. But he finished as a top 10 quarterback as a rookie. I think that when you look at the supporting cast here, when you look at everything, I think there's a very good chance he bounces back into that top 10 territory. I like what we know what he I like the kind of quarterback he is. I like what he brings to the table. In my opinion, he's an elite talent, good supporting cast, good coaching. There's a lot to like here about CJ Stroud, and I think a floor season for him is top 15. I really do think that that's a floor season. I don't think he's going to give me a floor season. I think he's going to give me a bounce back year. And I think when you look at, top 12 this season, I think is very feasible for someone like CJ Stroud. So for me, I really, really like it here. As my QB, I'm okay with it. Like, and there might be some out there that don't want CJ Stroud as their number one quarterback, and that's fine. But my goal in these drafts again is to leave with a top 12, top 10 quarterback, QB1, right? And I look at my rankings right now, my live rankings over at fantasyguru.com, which is the auction draft book, and he's sitting at QB9. Like he is sitting at QB9 for me. I'm okay with that there. Um, Very next pick, we are now on to round 12. So you see, like, we're getting deep in there. Um, I wore Roshan Johnson. I handcuffed Swift here. I thought that was the move. I think Roshan will carve out a strong role, if not identical to the one Swift has. I think he'll carve out one very similar if Swift were to miss any time. So for me, it was very important to lock down the handcuff here for Swift, especially since I reached for Swift, right? Like I went a couple rounds before his normal ADP, so I went ahead and did that there. And again, we're gonna see what happens. We know that Roshan Johnson's dealing with a foot injury. Um, so it's something to monitor. But at the time of the draft, he was the handcuff, and he was the guy I wanted to secure this backfield with. Very next pick, round. Now we're on to round 13. All right, so we got four more rounds here. We got four more rounds here. We're on to round 13. And this is where I'm just adding depth, right? And there's a lot of options, there's a lot of different players. I want Will Shipley here, who I don't like. I look at the Eagles backfield and I don't think there's a clear-cut handcuff. And by the way, there is the RB handcuff grid over at fantasyguru.com that Jeff Mans puts together each and every year. Strongly recommend that. It's very, very good and useful tool here. It basically gives you all of the handcuffs for all of the teams, which ones are secure, which ones are volatile, which ones are unstable, which ones there's injuries, all of that stuff is here. And if you look at, I'm looking for the Eagles, and so Will Shipley is the one that is listed as the handcuff there, but it does say with caution, right? It does say with caution. So I took Will Shipley here because I do think that if Barkley were to miss time, Shipley's not going to be that every down back, but I do think he'll get some opportunities in the passing game. I do think that he'll get, probably 10 to 14 opportunities here, with potential for more. You really got to see how this backfield shapes up there, with AJ Dillon as well. So for me, this is just the depth piece. I'm not looking to start Shipley. I'm not looking for lightning in a bottle. I'm not looking for any of that. It's just the depth piece that, you know, I, I'm adding at the position. It's really what it is. There's nothing more, nothing less. He was someone I was investing in last year, in like the last rounds of like very deep leagues sometimes, like not overly invested, but sometimes over didn't get many opportunities as a rookie. I think he could get some more opportunities here this year, especially if Barkley were to miss any time. Then round 14, Jalen Royals, wide receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs. This is just swinging for the fence, right? Like this is your lightning in the bottle. This is see if it happens, see if it comes to fruition. If it doesn't, he's gonna get cut. That's okay. It is what it is. And then that's kind of how I'm viewing. Like I am going to take some chances in these final rounds, especially in these deep formats where you're looking at these lightning in the bottle kind of players, right? You're looking at these potential guys who can be difference makers. Um, and I went with him there. Very next pick in round 15. So I was picking on the app and it for whatever goodness reason, I have no idea. It froze on me. I went back in and the pick was already auto drafted to a Tagovailoa. I was hoping it got me. I was hoping I was hoping to draft Roman Wilson there. But I ended up getting Roman Wilson in round 16. I like Roman Wilson a lot. I think he really could carve out that number two role there in Pittsburgh. And someone that I like the profile. I like the player profile. I like the wide receiver profile. Um, so that was my intention in round 15. It ended up auto picking Tua. I immediately dropped Tua as soon as the draft was over. I dropped Tua. And then I went into the waivers, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So I did take Roman Wilson with my 16th pick. He was my 15th, it's who I wanted in round 15. So clearly, I'm human. I make mistakes, ladies and gentlemen. I made two mistakes in this draft, right? So there you go. So I did go with Roman Wilson here. And again, it's just adding receiver depth. At this point, my bench is going to be filled with receiver depth, running back depth. And what I did was after the draft, I obviously I got Tua Tagovailoa, I got him, I dropped him. I already had my quarterback. Didn't need a second quarterback here. And I added Andre Usovis. All right. And he's someone that sees a lot of snaps, and he's going to be on the field a lot. Not necessarily equals opportunities, doesn't necessarily equal targets. It's not going to equate to that, but he's going to be on the field, right? And if there's an injury to a pass catcher here in Cincinnati, we know that this is a pass-heavy offense. We know that this offense likes to sling it. If there's someone missing, if there could be opportunities here at some point for him. Being invested in the Bengals offense, in my opinion, is a plus thing, right? Like I look at it as like you're looking at players and you're looking at teams you want to be invested in. This is one of those situations where he is a player that in this kind of format, maybe I'm not going to use, maybe I will. But if the role increases, if he's on the field so much and we see the target share increase, he could potentially be a piece that I plug and play on an emergency basis. And then another thing I did, so Chris Godwin is currently listed as out, and you could actually move him to the IR slot. And that's what I did. I moved him to the IR slot and I added AJ Dillon. So I basically got the entire Eagle backfield, just kind of see how it plays out. I'm not a Dillon guy. Um, but again, I'm going to see how this backfield shapes up because at the end of the day, like Barkley did have a lot of touches last year. He did have a lot of touches. Like remember this team went into the postseason. They won the Super Bowl. Like he was a big part of their playoff run and he had a lot of opportunities. And I'm not saying just because they had a lot of opportunities, you should be worried or cautious, but you just never know, right? We've seen this and we've seen this in the past where players, they tend to miss time, maybe not play the same at the same level that they did. So if he does miss time, I got this backfield secured right now. Yusova's probably going to be my or Royals, or one of those two will probably be the first player I cut here. So kind of where I'm at. So that's basically the draft here, kind of the thought process as we go through it. And my plan, I really wanted to go with the wide receiver early, but I didn't want to abandon the running back position. I went a little bit more balanced early on. I generally go more wide receiver heavy, but the way the draft kind of fell to me, I made an adjustment with my approach and I went ahead and hammered some of the running backs earlier on than I usually do. I guess I did make some mistakes here. I should have just taken Garrett Wilson, and if I would have double dipped on the Jets or something like that, sure, in round two. I do regret not doing that now, but obviously hindsight 2020. As far as the running backs, like I'm good with Josh Jacobs there too. I know that you can make a case for several other running backs, and that's okay. I have him in buckets, right? In tier buckets, and he was in that bucket for me. And I feel very comfortable with him. The Javonte Williams, obviously, that's a fucking I'm an idiot, I guess you could say, right? Like it's just fucking Armando, man. What were you doing? So that one could come and bite me in the ass. I think. I think it could bite me in the ass there. And then obviously I don't know what happened. Like the app fucking froze on me, and then all of a sudden I get back and I have two. And it's so funny because I'm probably the one person who will almost never draft Tua in a redraft format, especially in a single quarterback league. Like almost, I mean, not almost. Never will I draft him in a single quarterback league like that. And here I go get him auto drafted. And then I don't draft two quarterbacks either, and then I get a quarterback auto. It's just yeah. So yeah, this is a 14 team league. All right. So kind of recap there. I'm not gonna go pick by. I could give you pick by pick like what I did there, but basically here, this was a 14 team league where you start one quarterback, two running backs, three wide receivers, three flex, and a tight end. And my draft board is Justin Jefferson, Josh Jacobs, Devontae Adams, DeAndre Swift, Devontae Smith, Chris Godwin, Michael Pittman Jr., Trey Benson, Javonte Williams, Dallas Goddard, CJ Stroud, Roshan Johnson, Will Shipley, Jalen Royals, Roman Wilson, and then of course I gotta say Tua Tagovailoa, but that was another pick, ladies and gentlemen. That was not meaningful there. So that's it right there. Look, as you can see, my bench is filled with wide receiver and running back depth. Is kind of what I preach. I was able to handcuff DeAndre Swift. I was unable to handcuff Josh Jacobs during the draft. Everyone was injured in his backfield to kind of made it very challenging. Lloyd would have been the guy I wanted to get, but he went a couple of picks before or I think he went around before I wanted to invest in him. I'm very happy with my receiving group here. So I'm very happy with my starting lineup. My starting lineup currently consists of CJ Stroud, Josh Jacobs, DeAndre Swift, Justin Jefferson, Devontae Adams, Devontae Smith. You got Dallas Goedert, Michael Pittman, Chris Godwin, and then Javonte Williams to start of the year. I got Trey Benson, another one who I can potentially plug and play. This is a team where I'm definitely going to be working the waiver wires to beef up the bench. I do think that, we did a good job at balancing the running back and the wide receiver position here. I'm totally fine. Yes, I did not get myself an elite tight end. Yes, I did not get myself an elite quarterback, but I'm totally fine here because I feel like I got a very strong foundation at the running back wide receiver position. And I also think that this is one of those situations where I got a balanced overall roster here. And that's my key in these head-to-head, especially these deeper formats where you're looking for balance and you're looking for, yes, you want upside. Yes, you want ceilings. Yes, you want, you want the best of it, but you're gonna be weak at some positions, and that's something you need to understand with these larger formats and these larger leagues where there's gonna be deficiencies in your lineup, whether it's the bench, whether it's not having the elite tight end, whether it's not having the elite quarterback, whether you decide to take the plunge and you took the elite quarterback, but now you're missing your wide receiver three, you're missing your running back two. So you got to navigate these drafts and very carefully. You got to make sure you have a plan. And my plan here was to build a very strong foundation. My plan here was to build, a good receiving group, a balanced roster, one that has a lot of depth, and still not miss out on guys, right? Like I'm still getting a top 10 quarterback on my board. I'm still getting a top, 15 tight end on my board in a 14 team league. So I'm still getting a tight end one on my board. I'm not getting a tight end that's going to give me 20 fantasy points per game, correct? But I'm still getting one that's going to give me a really safe floor on a week to week basis. And from time to time, we'll have some pretty big weeks when he finds the end zone. So, like, I'm okay with that. And a big week for him might be 15, 16, 17 fantasy points. I'm okay with that, right? Because I did take my tight end into the double digit rounds. By then, I had plenty of running backs, plenty of receivers, and I had a really, really strong foundation. And I was my flex spots pretty much were taken care of as well. So yeah, when you're drafting these large formats, nothing really changes. Like always pay attention to the scoring settings, always pay attention to, roster settings. But nothing should change. You shouldn't be focusing on one specific, position or what. Just take the draft as it comes, see how it goes, and make adjustments as you go, right? And always pay attention. That Trey Benson pick for some like, man, eighth round. Well, it's a 14 team league, number one. Number two, James Conner's owner had two picks before my next pick. Very, very high chance, very high probability that I was not going to get him. In fact, that manager did draft a running back with one of those two picks. I forgot to mention that earlier, but he did draft a running back with one of those two picks there. So um, don't be afraid to take chances. Don't be afraid to reach for a player. Don't be afraid to take a player a couple rounds ahead of ADP if you really have a strong, opinion on that player. And this doesn't necessarily mean that you take a player that's going in round six and you take them in round two, or we're not talking about that. You take these kind of risks later in drafts. As you know, mine was in round eight is when I took that first reach. I didn't really reach that much early on. So that's it. That's the 16. Okay. So that's a 14 team league. That's a PPR setting. This was the Keynes Classic Len Dawson division. That was my draft. That was my pick by pick, kind of my thought process there, what I was thinking throughout the draft, what I was paying attention to. And hopefully this helps you guys prepare for your, PPR drafts, especially for those who are doing larger drafts and even those who are doing 12, 10, 18, teams, leagues. This should be helpful. It kind of walks you through the thought process, kind of what I was doing, how I approach this draft. And if you have any questions, you can always ask me, whether it's Discord, whether it's contacting me on social media, whether it's emailing me at mindofmarsal@gmail.com, whatever it is, you can always reach out to me. I'd be happy to help you with all and every question there that you might have. Remember, make sure you're checking all of my work over there at fantasyguru.com. Make sure you're following me on the Twitter machine at Armando_Marsal, as well as on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Mind of Marsal. And enjoy, if you're enjoying the podcast, if you're enjoying the content, if you're enjoying these YouTube videos, if you enjoy all of this stuff, make sure you're following, subscribing, liking, favoriting, all of that good stuff as it goes a huge way for the podcast. Today I discussed my I recapped. I didn't discuss it. I recapped my Kings Classic 14 team PPR league there. I did that draft this past weekend. It was a fun one. Always enjoy doing those. And feel free to let me know what you think. Talk to me about my draft. Let me know what you thought about my process, how you thought, anything you disagreed on, anything you agreed on, all of that stuff. Reach out to me. Let me know. Again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed this week's journey through the mind of Marsal. Until next time.